be hearing all about this. Marcia McFalls, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for sticking around. So we, the Majorettes, have been around just as long as the band. Our first Majorette squad was in 1948 to 49. And one of our most notable distinctions was our uniform, so I'm going to go ahead and show you that. So just a little bit about myself. I am a my kids are fifth generation South Fayette. My parents are both from Sturgeon, and we all kind of grew up around here, and we've all stayed in South Fayette. I did graduate in 1991, and I went to Duquesne University, continuing our theme with our ring. And I am a pharmacist and a pharmacy professor in Duquesne University. So, and lucky enough, my daughters are also interested. They're both in the band, and my daughter is a majorette. So I didn't want her to do it. I didn't force her to do it. Honestly, she came to me, and the rest is history. So this organization's only actually been around for since Memorial Day. And it came about because we marched in our first ever Alumni Band Parade in the Memorial Day Parade this year, which was so much fun. So some of the majorettes were there, and we were trying to say, well, where did this start, or who was in the group at that time, and nobody knew. So anybody that knows me knows once I get something in my head that I don't stop until it comes to fruition. So it has been a labor of love, I'd like to think of it kindly, since that time. So during that time, I have built a website, which I'll show you, which is the South Fayette Majorette Alumni Association, of which I was able to go back all the way to 1948 through today. Every girl that's ever been on the squad, who was the head majorette, different traditions, etc. And I can tell you, what I thought was, it probably won't be all that bad. It was a labor of love. We'll leave it at that. And the easiest thing would have been was to go to the school and look through the yearbooks, because I wanted to get pictures of every year. And as luck would have it, my luck, all the yearbooks are packed away because the school is under construction. So it literally was my mom, Carol McFalls over here, she would go, okay, who graduated then? Let me call them. Okay, let me call them. And it was a major networking. I would stop at people's houses after work, just take pictures from their yearbook. But it's been a lot of fun, and like Ryan said, the way you learn it is by talking to people. It's not necessarily what's in print, it's by talking to people. So I'm going to go through a history of the uniforms, because a majorette twirls a baton. Majorette twirls a baton. That's pretty much, we can go through some of the different types of music, but what's most notable is we're in front of the band and the way of the appearance. So this is the first ever squad here in 1948, and this is the one that my daughter Lauren is in as of last year. That was the official picture. We don't have this year's yet. So the first majorettes in South Fayette were, as Ryan said, with the Drum and Bugle Corps in the mid-40s. So this is very, very early on here, and I was not able to find, and if anyone has that information, not able to find any of the girls in here who their names were, simply because of the age. But they did perform with the Drum and Bugle Corps, and there were quite a few of them there. This, as was mentioned earlier, was the first ever majorette squad. So I want to be sure I pay respect to each. This was Diane McCracken, the first ever head majorette at South Fayette. We have Evelyn Morganti, followed by Ann Verselli, and then Rosemarie Swidnovich. I think I got that one right, because I made sure when I interviewed some of the majorettes from the 1950s, they made sure that I pronounced that correctly. So that is it, and you can see, can you imagine now with the big feathers, etc. up there, that would be a nightmare. But Diane was that first ever head majorette. Her mom bought that for her. What did she do to her mom? Right. Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
Support. Yeah, we have that.
Okay, this proceeded. A couple years later, and as you'll notice, there were actually junior majorettes here. And from what I understand, those were the newer majorettes at the beginning. Mr. Sakiti liked the S, the F, the H, and the S. So that, it reminds me of Greece whenever I see that.
Yeah.
But these are the majorettes, the seasoned majorettes. And then down here, we have the S and the F. Now this is interesting because this is Elaine Matthews McGraw, the former magistrate. Hopefully nobody's ever appeared in front of her. But that would be Elaine. And I interviewed Elaine a few weeks ago. And it was interesting though, she's a relative of the McFallses. So I've known her for a while, but it was interesting because, you know, at first she just kind of like didn't really remember a lot or would pull out. And then as we went through the picture, she's like, oh my gosh. And then it developed into an hour and a half long conversation. And it was a nice walk down memory lane for her too. So yeah, that's pretty, we have some notable people in the presentations tonight.
How about the other one? Maclean, the other girl, she married
McAleen, yes.
to her brother. A decent.
Yeah. So as you'll see, the uniforms took a tiny bit of a change here, and this is Peg DeMarco Bruni, if anybody knows the Bruni family, which I'm sure a lot of people in South Fayette do. And I have quite a few uniforms here, so just to give you a peek of what this one was. From the original one in 1948 to now, they are the same uniforms, but the end turned green. They had the green put on the end. And it was interesting because John Testa gifted these to me whenever he retired. So they've been in my mom's attic since 1989. And when I took them out, I took them to model cleaners and I said, you know, what do you think we can do for these? Well, the first thing she said was, I'm going to have you sign about these many waivers because if it comes in here, it may not come back out in one piece. So I actually took them home, put them in OxyClean, and well, it didn't work all that well, but they don't smell anymore. So this is the original uniform that they had, and there are buttons here, and this tradition up until recently has been carried through with the pleats with the green on the inside. So, and these ones, so there have been 11 different uniforms since 1948. These lasted, and I have my notes here, these lasted 19 years.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and I'm sure at some point new ones were made, but maybe not because of budgetary reasons. We found that there are some issues with that that I'll show you as we progress along here. Okay, so then after these, again, after quite a few years of having these particular uniforms, I thought these were pretty nice. This I do not have a copy of, which I would love to have one of these uniforms, but they have the Treble Clef here.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, this was the class of, this was my mom and Mr. Rowland year, 1963 to 1964, the graduates of 64 here. Karen Sparkenbaugh, I believe was one of those. Mickey Rosa, yes. Okay, so from there, and this only lasted, the Treble Clef I believe only lasted a year or two, not very long. It moved into what's known as, I call it the inverted triangle, but I think it was the beginning of the shield, of which we'll talk about the iconic shield in just a moment. This, Dominic, do you know who this is?
Is that my grandma?
That's your grandma. That's Patty Holman. Dominic Lazzini is here tonight, and that's his grandma there. And as you can see from the beginning, the boots, which I have up here, these are mine and my daughter's, look almost identical. So except for a few rare occasions, these old-fashioned boots have been there from the beginning. Yep. Okay, moving on. Back in 1965, they went back to the original uniforms. I'm assuming again because of budgetary reasons. They looked okay, but as you can see there, they are identical to those. And those lasted until about, these ones were till 1970. Then 1970 came the white ones. Now, anybody that had to wear that hat, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Yes. The Majorettes must have been bad that year. So this is the uniform from that year. And as you can see, this has been pretty standard here. And we had the little loops at the bottom and the SF in the corner. So it's actually pretty modern uniform for that time. But this one lasted quite a while, so as you can see, there's nothing I could do with the yellow,
Yeah.
but we'll bring that back in just a minute whenever I talk about the next version of this one. So this one was 1970 to 1973. This year just probably shouldn't have happened, but this was 73 through 75. This is what I refer to as the disco uniform. I don't have these. My guess is the girls probably threw them away. But as you can see, and I'm really surprised they got away with this as short as it was with that time. The little buttons here. So that one was through 1975, and they did have to twirl with those hats. So that would have been interesting. Then we morphed into 1975, 76. It's sort of casual, you can see. It has the SF in the center there. And they did go with go-go boots. And go-go boots were brought back in my daughter's first year. And she tells me they're very difficult to twirl. And I never wore go-go boots. If any of you ever wore them, I can't imagine they were that easy to walk in, let alone twirl in on the field.
I think Mrs. Anarelli, somebody made those. Yeah.
These ones? Yeah, Cindy Anarelli's in the center there, I believe. Okay, now we move into 1976, and this became a one-piece. And as you can see, it's very plain, probably low budget, but it's cute. But it's cute, yeah, I imagine that they were. And this one, although I don't have it, does come with a jacket. So there was a little green jacket, I imagine was probably wore for pregame, or I can't imagine they could twirl in it, but that was worn as a pregame maybe right before they did the Star Spangled Banner or march down to the field.
In the winter games. That would be freezing.
Yeah, Chris, were you freezing?
We never wore those twirling, you're right, we just wore those when it was cold.
No, with these, were you cold?
In the summer, they were really hot.
Yeah.
In the winter,
Yeah, got a little chilly. Okay, moving into 1979, and Chris, you're making some cameos. This is Chris in the center here. So what happened was, as Chris alluded to before, they needed new uniforms, but they realized that there was no money. So they went back into the vault and picked these and said, well, they're still in pretty good shape, but they're yellow. So what do? Well, they take this uniform, remove the SF, and it's black. So this and this is identical. It was simply taken and dyed. So this would never go with the school district now. They would all fall over. So, and they did add the cords on the side. Yeah, just to make it a little bit different. Okay. All right, so, which brings us to probably one of the most memorable things as a majorette. I know whenever I tried out for majorette, to get to wear the shield was such an honor, just because all majorettes before that we knew had that shield, just to be able to get that. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the evolution of the shield. So I'm lucky enough to have Miss Vivian Cottrell-Lee with us, who actually had enough nerve to approach Mr. Testa to ask if she could design a new uniform. So one of the pictures...
And I shook the whole time.
I believe you did. I believe you did. And there's a picture over there that of Mr. Testa that I remarked to Mary Lee. I said, this is his face. This is what I think of when I think of Mr. Testa. So I can just imagine Vivian going up to him and saying, I have an idea for a new uniform. So his big concern when I spoke with Vivian is that not too much skin could show, and for the time, and Mr. Testa being very conservative, and he finally relented and said, okay, design something and bring it in and show me. And you said you were extremely nervous, and he probably in his way scratched his beard, took off his glasses, thought about it a little bit, and probably said something like, well, I don't hate it. So that's what ended up happening. And so this was a cool story because we never knew where the shield came from. It was like this infamous shield and it just appeared. So upon in interviewing Vivian, we found out that her inspiration came to the majorette right here, who is sitting behind Vivian. We're full of superstars tonight. This is Cheryl Harrington, maiden name at the time, and your mom was instrumental in designing. This was from Dormont High School. So you can see the inspiration. It's a similar uniform, and the shield is much bigger than any of our shields. But it has DHS, which is Dormont High School, which at the time would eventually evolved into Keystone Oaks High School. So this was from the mid-60s. And Vivian, you always liked that whenever you saw that, so whenever you had the opportunity. And she just thought the black time had passed, that it was time for something new rather than young girls being in the black majorette uniform. So this is her daughter. This is Lori Cottrell Martini. She graduated in 1985, and this was her first year wearing this and debuting. So the shield, the iconic shield, first came about in the 84-85 football season. And I sent this picture to Lori, and she told me, I said, please don't kill me. And she said, when I come into town, run very fast. But it looked wonderful. And this was that first ever squad with the shields. So I think it still had some of the inherent beginnings of some of these, which is nice to carry it through, but it also made it a little bit more modern with that particular shield.
Who's on the far right, do you know?
The far right, that is Tracy Nettich. Yes, yes. So this particular uniform was right here. Yeah. And you can see why all the girls wanted to wear that. It was just, there was something about it. But again, note that, the shoulder pads, this was very similar from some of the prior uniforms, but the shield. So you're thinking maybe it's like a little big, it's hard to twirl in. It actually wasn't all that bad. Vivian designed it by having Velcro that can easily be taken off. Because the biggest thing was, and my mom kind of oversaw all the uniforms throughout the years when I got this, was you needed to make sure you patted the shield dry in the event that you were out in rain, because otherwise we were worried about the color run on there. So, but it was really nice because these were washable, so we didn't have to take them anywhere. They weren't wool, you didn't have to dry clean them, they were all washable and just had to be hung to dry. So this was that original, and this is actually one of the original shields. Yeah, it is a beautiful uniform.
The other thing that Mr. Testa told me is if they're too short, it'll get canned in an instant.
Yep.
So
And anybody that knows Mr. Testa will believe that in an instant.
Yep.
So out of the 11 uniforms, this one lasted, ready, 32 years. 32 years. And the only change that happened over that time period was the shield itself. So the original shield was just sort of in block lettering. My junior year, it changed to the little bit fancier script, but the identical shield. Then they gave a little bit of a distinction to the head majorette in 1994 and 95, where the head majorette was able to have like a silver. Up until then, head majorette uniforms weren't really that different. The only thing that served as a distinction was the whistle and having pom-poms that were different than others. Yeah, and they evolved over the years. When I was head, they were all green, and the majorettes wore green and white. These were my first set of boots. And now they wear all white, the head majorettes, and then the other majorettes were all green. So it really did, that's one thing, it's been given some flexibility. It just depends on the squad and how they want to do that. And then this is the most recent one. I apologize, I don't have great pictures of those. What it ended up doing was like a sash type thing. And it went to the SFHS that the band uniforms were changed to. So the only thing on the uniform that changed were sequins were added. So just to make it a little bit more modern. Yeah, but and you notice the shield's a little bit smaller than the other one, so it probably made it a little bit easier for the girls to twirl with that. All right. And you can see that would be the majorette that was not head majorette, was a little bit different. Now the only other uniform in that time frame was Mr. Testa. Well, during that time frame, my mom hired a private coach because I decided I wanted to compete in baton twirling. So I was competing on statewide levels. And one day, Mr. Testa heard me talking about it my junior year and said, I'd like to see a video of that. So I asked my mom, she videoed one of my competitions and brought that in, and he said, took off his glasses, I'll still remember, he's like, kid, I wouldn't mind seeing that at the halftime show. Which I was really surprised. So I had the absolute honor of being the first feature twirler and the only one since that time during that. And I should have known something was up that he was going to retire that year because he didn't ever allow that any other time. That should have been the first clue. But this was the feature twirler outfit for the green and white. So that was really, really a cool opportunity.
Now you're gonna show us your show, right?
That's next week. All right, and then we move to, sadly, for all of us that adore the iconic shield, last year they were redesigned, and the shield no longer exists. And they were redesigned into what they refer to now as the sparkly uniform, and what they refer to this as the traditional uniform. So it's interesting because the majorettes that I still keep in touch with nowadays, the first thing they say is, I really miss the shield. So, but I guess we must progress on. We must progress on. So, and this is the picture of the girls with the traditional uniform. So some other notable things about the majorettes as we progress through the times. All majorettes had to play an instrument, period, which I think is pretty distinctive. A lot of bands, if you're going to be a majorette, you try out to be a majorette and you're done. That was something that was expected with all the band directors and including up until now and including Aaron as well. So all students must play their first year an instrument, and then after that they can try out to be a majorette. So if they're in their 9th grade year, then they can try out to be a majorette in their 10th grade year. Now, which was interesting because 100 years ago, whenever I was in band, that Mr. Testa did have that, he handpicked people from 6th grade to 7th grade to come in. And then there were actually no majorettes interested. So I was able to be a majorette in 9, 10, 11, and 12. So, and head 10, 11, and 12, which was unique. So I was really young being a majorette. The only other distinctive story that I have with that is Patty Slovic, if anybody happens to remember. She was the only one that seemed to be an exception to that rule. Apparently Mr. Testa allowed her to try out to be a majorette her first year in band, and she never had to be in the band. She went right to majorette. So, I'm sorry?
Back then, I think you were the band in 7th and 8th
Right.
grade, so she would have had a couple years later.
Yeah. Well, other than that, but that first year where everybody, had to be in the band for some reason. Yeah. So, but she was a majorette then, I believe, for 5 years. So she has the record of any of us. So this is an interesting picture. All the different majorettes and what they played. There's some clarinets there. This is Elaine McGraw. She played the trumpet there. I think this is Peg DeMarco Bruni, if that memory serves me. And up until I've been able to figure out somewhere after 1997, I don't know, Ryan, if you remember, all majorettes had to switch to piccolo, period. So if you played saxophone and you wanted to be a majorette, then you better learn how to play the flute because that was a role for Mr. Testa. Now, they're out there with baritone saxes and all kinds of crazy things. It'd be interesting to see a majorette with as a drummer. I would love to see that one. So that's what they had to do. So now they are able to, whatever instrument that they're versed on, that they're able to continue that. But that's a pretty significant, pretty special thing for South Fayette, that we do have to be musicians because that was important. We had to understand the role of the musician, the dancing, the instrument, the music, and then we could progress on from there if that was what we wanted to do. Some other interesting things as I talk to different people through here, there are some mothers and daughters. As we progress through, we have Arlene Aliseski, am I pronouncing that correctly, from 1956. And this is her daughter Diana Steer from 1983. And this was interesting though, because for some reason she had a different top as head majorette. That never happened throughout the time. So whether or not perhaps one didn't fit, but she had a dark green top, which nobody has. I'm not sure what the history is behind that. Anybody from South Fayette would have had or knew Mrs. Lazzini. This is Denise Laval from 1970. And that is her daughter Heather Lazzini that graduated in 1996. If you can't see the resemblance there, there's no question of whose mom that is, right? And then I'm lucky enough that that's me in 1991 and my daughter, who will graduate in 2019, of which I'm in denial about. I'm still not accepting that that's going to happen. So as far as majorettes, just making memories, one thing that we all have that's interwoven is the love of music, which was instilled in us from whoever. I was a Testa / 1-year rolling kid. If you were a Testa kid, there were so many things other than music and twirling that, especially with Mr. Testa, that I got to take away from band, and it had nothing to do with music. It was discipline. It was working together. It was working together as a group. It was hard work and determination. So I think, and those things still help me now, you know, and I still am, I'm not going to tell you what I am, but you can figure it out. Still twirling and still doing it, and we'll be doing it in the Alumni band August 7th. So just kind of going through, making memories. It doesn't matter what decade we were in, we all had the same experience. We all have said over and over some of our best times in our life were in band, and I can honestly say that's true. Just, you were in a family of your own, you were etched, you were just a special breed that I don't think you get unless you were in that. So this is Peggy DeMarc. I mean, God bless them for being able to do this. I don't think any of us did that. So this was this was 50-51. And I also thought this was kind of neat because, you know, we always had that division. There was the football team, there was the majorettes, there was the cheerleaders.
Yes.
And, you know, anyone doesn't know that went on, you're not remembering right. But so this was kind of nice where you showed, this was the different majorettes and then there were cheerleaders intermingled. So there was that school spirit, there was that integration, which I can honestly say in the 90s, 80s and 90s, it wasn't all that there. We maybe had 11 students standing at the little fence there. And now it's changed. It's kind of going back to that. There's a student section now of which is full of students. So that's kind of nice to see from that. An interesting thing that happened, I started interviewing people from that were graduated in the 50s and 60s, and the history is so rich there. And I recently spoke with a woman that is in a long-term care facility, and she has some short-term memory issues. So for example, if I went to see her next week, she may not remember I was there, but I mentioned one thing about band. I show her one picture and she is immediately back there. She knew everybody's name, she knew stories, she could tell me so many just interesting things. So for example, for this picture, she said that this was down where 84 Lumber is, as Ryan was alluding to before, but there were no lights. And they had to have some night practices for whatever reason, and she said she remembers Fairview coming down and some of the police department coming down. They would park in the front of the field, turn on their lights at night so that the band was able to practice. So, but it was just so interesting that somebody that's in her late 80s could go right back to that moment and could feel those feelings of what it was like to be up front or in the band. So it's been really an interesting journey for me as I'm finding. This was one of the pictures at one of the sleepaway camps. This was from 1960-61. Some of the girls dancing from 1978, I believe. Yes. But Chris, can you put yourself back there? Can you?
Those heels were
Yeah.
like 2 inches.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This happened to be my year. This is where we went with Mr. Rowland down to Myrtle Beach, and we marched down there. We've evolved to where the girls are now twirling at Heinz Field. That was in 2008. And the same fabric is interwoven all those decades later, and the girls still love doing it. They still love being in front of the band, still love participating. And again, I always like to say the common thread starts with the entrance, the music. I'll never forget Mr. Testa. There's no computers, there's no plugging in. I remember him sitting in that dirty little office and handwriting everything. And there's just something about someone creating something from a pencil and a paper that was pretty dramatic. Coupled that for us with the baton, and 30 years later, we still have that same love, and we come back together. This was the 5 of us at the Memorial Day Parade this year in 2017. So you had Lori Cottrell Martini that was there, and Shannon Smith, Charlotte's daughter, right there. And that's us marching right in front of the McDonald's. So we did that how many years ago, and we came full circle. And it was interesting, my parents were there, and my mom was listening to the conversations around, and people were just in awe, you know, because we may be older, maybe a little bit slower, but we still have the heart, we still have the love, and we still have the sound. We may have been small, but we were, and that's what my mom said, the comments around were, wow, they were really good. So it was really a fun, just enjoyable experience. So I'm going to just show you quickly if anybody has any interest. This is the website that I designed, and I was able to go back through every single decade and list all of the girls and show each individual majorette picture that they would have had. So I have this through every single decade from 1948 all the way up. And the interesting part is I have an easier time getting the older ones than I do from the kids in 2000. So, you know, and they live on their phones. So, you know, when the school reopens back up and the library is available, I hope to get that. But I was able to do that. And then for anybody, again, that might be interested in seeing this, there's also a timeline of the uniforms. So anybody that would like to see how it progresses, what the head majorette uniforms look like, and the other majorettes uniforms, to see how times have changed. It's kind of interesting with that. And then through each decade, whatever candidates I've been able to get, I've separated them by each individual year. So I invite anybody to go on and take a look at the site. It's a work in progress, but I'm really proud of that simply because we have such a rich tradition with the little grain machine. And the majorettes, they're the front. They're the first ones that you see. They're an integral part of the band. So I wanted to be sure that I captured that. All right, and that's the end of my presentation, and I wish to thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you very much, Marcia. These lovely, lovely uniforms. Did anybody have any burning questions or comments for Marcia or Ryan before today?
What's up with the aversion to black?
Yeah.
What's up with the aversion to black?
Black flannel plaid.
So school district, like, it's not like an official color of the school district.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, like around, beginning in high school, 99, 2000, there were all kinds of different greens. And I remember I had a band jacket that was like a dark forest hunter green, and Dr. Hibbert kind of wanted to organize that, and I'm not sure exactly why the black went away, but it was decided that it was Kelly green and white. And black is, if you look on any of the athletic uniforms, it's not even an accent color. It's not anywhere in the uniforming. And like the green pants and the white shoes, they look they look fine, they look great, but the black pants and the white shoes, that was like a really big part of the band. Yeah, Charlotte's right there.
Because I was president of the Lion Pride organization simultaneously with being band president for 4 years out of my 8 in the band. So with Dr. Hippert, she wanted the one and only Kelly Green Pantone had to be that color. And there's only 5 companies in the entire United States that makes that color. So she wanted it to be very specific and white, which are the school colors. Plus, at that point in time, being president of the Lion Pride organization, we were trying to control the booster groups because there were many that were just going off willy-nilly doing whatever they felt like. And so it was a case of Dr. Hippert appointing me to coordinate all the booster groups. So we got all of them in. Some of them had never redone their bylaws since like 1902. So we brought them up to date. We worried about their dues, what they bought, what they were allowed to do, and all that kind of stuff. Schools can't control booster groups because they are separate, but it was just a case of trying to have them do South Fayette-ish stuff versus whatever they felt like and buying whatever they felt like. So the black was not a school color, so she kind of said, you can't have that. You could have silver, she'd prefer white, and then it was just kind of carried through from that to control. And a sideline is my daughter was head majorette for 2 out of her 4 years. You never know where the band is noticed and what somebody thinks about it. So having chaperoned many of the trips, we were at a St. Patrick's Day parade, which they do through the downtown city of Pittsburgh. And of course, you always have people who go, oh my God, they marched from Fayette County, because they don't know where South Fayette is. So you listen to that as you're walking down Grant Street. But this lady saw the band perform. And she loved them so much that she was getting married the month later at the William Penn Hotel. And she tracks down Mr. Mackey at the time and says, I want your band at my wedding. And so Shannon performed with the band when Michael got married. They surprised him at the hotel. He gets off the elevator and there's the band playing another one of his stuff. So that was all, they were very excited about that. But that was different. That was for their own directors. And so he says, well, that's a little weird, but we'll play at a wedding. And she says, I want the whole band or as many as you can get. And so he brought, I think when Shannon was in a junior year and she was head, he brought 35 of them and the school gave him the bus. And they trotted him down to the William Penn, kept him in his room, uniform and everything. There's everybody going on in the reception, and he only brought Shannon and the other 34 from the band on a Saturday night, because he wasn't making it mandatory because it was not a true performance. So he said, but I'll do anything for $500. So that was needed. The fine arts always is the low person on the totem pole when it comes to budgets. So Shannon blew the whistle, the doors opened by the master of ceremonies for this lady's wedding, and they marched all around the ballroom of the William Penn, and the guests were just agog. They made them do it 3 times. So they did the whole thing all around, and Shannon said it was the best 15-minute $500 she ever experienced. But she goes, who would think that this lady saw you? She was at the William Penn for her reception, but they were like from some faraway county that ended up being the city of Pittsburgh. So you just never know where somebody's going to see you and want to have you. So she said that's one of her best memories.
Oh, wedding. So there we have it. Everything from the football field to the festivals to the weddings, the little green machine. All right, folks, on that note, yes.
How much are the bricks?
The bricks are $100. And they will last at least 25 years until that bicentennial, I tell you.
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Well, I have to mention a couple of anecdotes about Mr. Testa that I always remember word for word. In 4th grade, we were choosing what instrument we would want to play, and I said I wanted to play drum. And Mr. Testa looked at me and said, you got nice straight teeth. We need trumpet players. I want you to play the trumpet. I want you to play the trumpet. Well, I didn't want to play the trumpet, so I chose the saxophone. A couple years later, I was playing the guitar, and me and my friend were auditioning for a school program, And we played, and again, Mr. Testa was there, and he said, I like the way you do your thing, guys, but can you keep it down? They can hear you in Glendale. Never forget that word for word.
Oh, in Glendale.
I think it was an exaggeration.
All right, folks, feel free to stay and visit a little more here tonight. And one more round of applause, please, for our guests, Marcia and Ryan. Before we scatter, may I please invite you, anyone who was in the band or associated with the band, come on up here before you scatter and allow me please to take a group picture while we're all together.